Hi, in this video, I'm going to describe control structures in R. Mainly, I'm going to show you how to do an if statement. So let's get started. There are multiple control structures in R. I'm going to formally define what this means. The most common ones that we typically use are if statements, for loops, while loops, and a couple other things that you can check out some of the other videos. In this video, though, I'm only going to cover the if statement. Make sure you look at the other ones if you want to know a little bit more about how to write a for loop or a while loop or other control structures in R. Okay, so what is a control structure? Control structure allows you to control the flow of execution of a program. You can write more sophisticated and more advanced scripts in R using control structures. And again, the most common ones are the if statements, if else statements, and those loops, for loops and while loops. I'll give you an example of an if else statement on the next slide here. So the if else statement, you can test a single condition or multiple conditions. So the simplest case is a simple if statement. So it's a single condition. So if a condition is met inside the parentheses, then some action is taken inside the curly brackets. Okay, so for example, if a variable equals a certain value, then certain action like you can change the value of a different variable, or you can do a print message, etc. Right? Second type is, or second structure, a little bit different, is the if-else statement. So technically, if you have an if statement, you don't need an else condition. You could just have a single if statement, so that if it satisfies if it satisfies that condition, then it'll execute that if statement. An if-else statement, that means that there is a default action, as in if the initial condition or the condition in the if statement is not met, then the else portion is executed. So for example, let's say the condition here is some value equals some value, or a variable equals some value, then some action can be taken. However, if that variable doesn't equal to that value, or the condition is not met, then it'll default to this other action inside the else curly brackets. And finally, you could have multiple else statements, right? So you can do if condition 1 is met, then you would execute some action. But if condition 1 is not met, then the second if statement, else if, R will check the second condition 2, and if this is satisfied, then a different action is executed. Okay. And maybe it doesn't satisfy any of those first two, then the third other action is executed. Okay, so it'll flow, from if it'll first check for the first condition 1. If it's true, if that's satisfied, this action is executed. If this condition 1 is not satisfied, then the second condition is checked. Is condition 2 satisfied? If it is, then a different action is executed. But if neither condition 1 or condition 2 is satisfied, then it will default to this final else case. We could have multiple else if conditions here. We could have as many as you want. Okay. So I'm going to give you 3 examples here. Let's start with this first one over here. X equals to 4. Let's say we set the value of x as 4. If x is greater than 10, then the value of y will be x squared. Okay, if we run this code, it should output a 4. So let's go into R, and I'm going to run this example and change the values around to kind of see how this works. Okay, let's go to R here. So let me write this out. So let me actually just write the first if statements first. So if this is the way you write an if statement in R, if, and then the parentheses, you can put a little space here if you want. If x greater than 10. So this is my condition. Okay, if this condition is true, then I want to take this action inside the curly bracket. I want to assign the variable y as x squared. Okay, and then so let's start with, let's say I'm going to set x, I think in the example in the slide, but x equals to 4. Okay, so I'm going to set x equal to 4, Control Enter there, and then run that if statement. Okay, let's read out y then. Okay, so this y should just be 4, right? Because x is not greater than 10, right? If I highlight just this portion and press Control Enter, you see it's false, right? So this action is never executed. Okay, if I look at y, it's just there's no y, right? It never got assigned because this was false. Okay, let's change this value. Let's change this to 11. Okay, let's change x to 11. I'm going to enter that. I'm going to again highlight this inside portion and press Control Enter. Now it's true, right? So if I run this if statement, this action inside this if statement will now be executed. Okay, so I'm going to run that, and then okay, and then the y right here, 11 squared is 121. So let me just verify that for you. So yeah, indeed, when x is turned set to 11, this condition is not true. So this action inside this curly bracket is executed. Okay. Okay. So let me report back to the 4, the original case in the example. Again, this never got reassigned, right? Okay. So right now it's not getting reassigned. It's just kind of stuck with the old y value. Okay. All right. Let's look at the second example here. Okay, so here I'm going to add an else case. So it's the same if statement, but now I have an else case, right? And then the value of y will be x divided by 2. Okay, in this case, if I set x equal to 4, then this first condition will be false. Because this is false, it'll automatically default to this else case, and then it'll execute this action right here, y equals to x divided by 2. Since x equals to 4, y will end up being 4 divided by 2 or equals to 2. Okay, let's go into R and let's verify this result. Okay, so I'm gonna set x equal to 4. Okay, let's add in the else here. Okay, so the way you add an else statement in R is simply after the initial if statement, you just put else and then curly brackets again. And here will be y equals to x divided by 2. And x is not greater than 10, right? So this will be false. It'll automatically then default to the second else case or the other else case. So I'm going to run this line there. So this should then read 4 divided by 2, right? Y equals to x divided by 2, where x equals to 4. So then y should be 2. Let's run that. And it's indeed 2 as we expected. Okay. So now let's change this back to, again, let's change this to 12 and see what happens. Okay. What should happen, right? Since x is greater than 10, it should not execute this action, right? Okay. So let's run that and let's run this. Okay. It'll never run this line because x is greater than 10, right? So it actually end up running this line here. So 12 squared should be 144. So indeed, y equals to 144. Okay. Let me revert this back to 4, and then again, this will be 2. Okay. All right. So let's go look at the final example here. Now this is with the else if case. So again, everything's the same now, but I've added this else if case. Okay, if there's second condition, x is less than 5, then I want y to be equal to x times 2 times x, basically, right? So R is going to check. It's going to go from top to bottom, right? It's going to check this, both of these conditions before defaulting this else case if it doesn't satisfy the first 2 cases. Okay, so x equals to 4. It first checks this first condition. Is x greater than 10? It's false. So it'll skip this action. It'll go to the next else if statement. Okay. Is x less than 5? True, right? Then it'll execute this second action here inside the curly brackets of else if. Okay, so it'll actually never even execute the last else statement here. Okay. All right. So in this case, y equals x equals to 4. And x is less than 5, y will just end up being 4 times 2. That's why the output will end up being 8. Okay, so let's go into R and let's give this a try. Again, I'm going to add in the else if case here. I'm going to skip some lines here. So the way you add an else if is the same way as initially we just added right after the first initial if statement. So else if here, and then parentheses, add the condition x less than 5, and then curly brackets, and I'm going to bring this else statement back. Okay. And then so the condition I'm going to have to add is y equals to x times 2. Okay. And then again, I'm going to run this, and I'm going to run this. Okay, so x equals to 4. So is x greater than 10? No, that's false. But is x less than 5? It's true, right? So then it'll actually run this line over here, right? So y ends up being 4 times 2 because x equals to 4. So this should then say 8. The value of y should be 8, right? Which indeed it is. Okay. Let's change this to value 1 and see what happens. Again, this first condition is false because x is not greater than 10. The second condition is true, right? Because x is less than 5. Okay, so then this will end up being 1 times 2. So y will end up being 2. Okay, so indeed it's 2. Okay, let's see. Let's do a 7. Okay, x equal to 7. Okay, so is x greater than 10? No, that's false. It'll go to the second else if statement. Is x less than 5? Well, that's also false, right? So then it'll revert to this default case here, the final else statement. So it'll actually run this line. So we know then y will end up being 7 divided by 2 or 3.5. Okay, so let's run this, 3.5. Okay, all right. So let's see here. Yeah, hopefully these examples make very clear to how to build these if statements. Make sure you look at the other videos if you're interested in how to set up a for loop or a while loop or some of the other control structures. There are, check out the other videos, some of the more advanced examples in using some of these if and for loops, etc. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful. Thanks for watching. Take care.